to remind everybody, uh, workshop defined in the DCCRs is for the board to be able to get together and discuss business. We are not allowed to take any action, so there won't be any action taken tonight. But we also invited owners who wish to view that they are welcome to do that. But questions and comments will not be taken from the audience. It's purely a meeting for the board. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. What we wanted to talk about was the roofing for the clusters. I mean, you guys can, everybody can see that they're moving along here on this lodge building. We anticipate that they'll be done, if not more, about 2 weeks early. And they're doing a great job. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it to Mark.
Okay, what I did is put together several short slides just to open up to start the discussion. Very brief slides. And Gary, if you could pull them up for me. And shrink it down just a tad.
What I'd like to do is actually minimize that. You want to shrink it down?
Oh, I don't know. I think that's the whole thing.
That is the whole.
Yeah.
So, just as Rick said, this is just not the clusters, this is the lodge, and this is where we are. It's moving very smoothly. I think the headline that we have for the lodge is there was no decking rot. It was a big worry. And that's probably one of the few reasons that we're ahead of schedule. Ross has told me completion and cleanup, you'll be out of here on September 23rd. Which is, I think, as Rick said, probably about 2 weeks ahead of schedule. There have been no problems. I don't know what else to say.
Shouldn't have said that.
Here's just.
Well, we said it the other day when we were talking
for
about
owners
it.
that would like to again see what you're getting for your money. We've got architectural shingles being installed. You can see them now. They're viewable. They look great. There will be hot edge along all of the rims of the roofs. This hot edge will eliminate the icicle problem that we've had for 50 years. And it's guttered, heated guttered, water will be taken to the storm system. So there'll be no ice on the ground. All of the shingles are underlined by an impervious water shield. So the leak problem is being taken care of properly. Here, so that takes us to the clusters. Earlier this year, we had a architectural firm in Durango do an analysis of our roofs. For any owners that haven't read it, please do. It's comprehensive. It really suggests a lot of the stuff that we're narrowing down on in this presentation now in terms of options. But again, this is her conclusion in quotes. The roofs have passed their useful life. Shingles and shards are found nearby. They're just in tough shape. Gary, these are some photos. This is High Point. This is probably the worst. High Point was installed in '99. But Pinecone was installed a year later, and then Campbell a year after that. So the writing is on the wall in terms of age. Where you have north and maybe northeast facing roofs where snow is allowed to build up, that's a lot worse than areas that may be to the south and west where the roofs stay drier. But pictures just say what we're looking at and why we're having this conversation right now. The roofs have met their life. Gary. So these are our options, and we've got 4 different options available to us that we will consider. We've got requests out to vendors on costs for these options now. That period is closed. We have four options. We have first, shingles, the architectural shingles, and that's what's being installed on the lodge right now. We have, the same shingles with nailable ventilated foam insulation. Then we have standing steel metal roofs. I'm saying bronze because that's sort of the standard color. And then the same roofs with nailable foam insulation. I italicized ventilation because there's a big difference between ventilated foam insulation and just plain old nailable foam insulation. You'll see that in a second. So, starting with the just plain asphalt shingles. And what I'll do for all four options is just list the pros and the cons. Again, no decisions have been made. These are just objective pros and cons. The pro for plain old asphalt shingles is they're very inexpensive. It's way inexpensive. I suppose you could say you get what you pay for. The cons with just an asphalt shingle on top of our solid cluster roofs is that have a very short life. And that's because there's what I'll say, the temperature delta, the differential in temperature leads to condensation between the shingle and the wood. That condensation leads to freeze thaw and problems. You end up with fish curling. And according to the experts, our roofer, our architect, we would have a very short life for those shingles. And by short, I'm saying, 9, 8, 9, 10 years. So, and also the bigger problem is they hold snow. We continue to have ice dams, and anyone that was here last winter can appreciate the size of the ice dams that were on the clusters. So this is not just a viable option simply because it would be just. So the next is how do we solve the problem with the architectural shingles directly against our solid roof? There's a product available. It's called ventilated foam. There's a sketch here of what ventilated foam is. It's literally a foam insulation that has a space in it where air is allowed to move through. It would correct the solid roof design problem because it's ventilated. It would allow full shingle life in about 20 years. Down here on along Cliffside in Glacier, some of the roofs are now being replaced. Those were installed in 2004. Architectural shingles. And the insulative properties that insulation in general gives you. The cons are this stuff is uber expensive. And by going with this option with architectural shingles with their life, we would exceed the cost of standing seam by a lot. So, and then we'd also, if it holds snow, we'd have to evaluate snow load, but the cost of this option probably just make it not viable. Next, we have standing seam. Standing seam, and here's a photo of standing seam in what's called dark bronze. The pros are it's got a very long life, 50 years. It's inert, so even without insulation, the temperature differential will not lead to damage to condensation. It sheds snow, sheds pine needles. For snow, it's effectively a passive system for eliminating snow dams. Visually, it's pleasing, it's upscale, and those are pros. The costs are it's more costly, but it's not more costly than shingles with the ventilated insulation. At Pinecone, we've got a tricky situation where John lives and where Andy lives. That
Joe.
but no, Joe doesn't have the tricky situation. Goes on the right side.
Oh,
of
I'm on
Pine
the
Cone.
other side.
And that is, it would probably require snow dams because of snow sliding on the parking lot or something. And unlike the lodge where we were able to put hot seam along a run of roof line, there we don't have a run of roof line. But even if we did, then the question is, where do we go with the drainage? And there's not a ready solution to that.
Well, I mean, there's a problem up there on that side anyway now. I mean, with the snow and ice coming off the roofs. Those covered parking places are challenged by a hump of frozen ice, water.
Greg and
Snow.
I have stood back and looked at it and Russ and, you know, there could be a solution. It would be a very complicated solution with guttering and drainage and such. But it is a problem. And at a minimum, it would require snow days.
We need to do some guttering back over there if we do that. Just, I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't mean,
No, go ahead.
but there should be some guttering done back there and we need to take that water someplace. And we do have some ideas. Just because if it comes off that roof, we've got that covered parking is, we end up with these glaciers.
Yeah.
That, I mean, the only way you get them out is when it starts softening up. In the late winter, when you get snow on it, you have to go in there with the backhoe and break it up. And then you take the risk of, messing up the parking lot. But it just, I mean, it's a horrible situation. So if we take that water and gutter it and do something with it, and like I said, we have some ideas. We'll just have to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a better situation than just letting it drip off and freeze.
It's a problem. And everything else is great. It's almost as if we're designed to have these roof shedding snow because almost all the units shed off under the golf course, except 10 units, something like
I
that.
was gonna ask, what is the space we're talking about that's problematic?
It's
The
that
northwest side of Pinecone,
we're
Yeah,
the
it's,
flip
I mean-
and they shed into the parking lots.
from unit 801 to approximately 825,
But
6.
801 to
Actually, you don't even have to
806,
go
I
that
don't
No,
think.
801 to 806 sheds on the
Oh,
ground.
that does shed to the far side?
807 to 821.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 807 to 821, right, is that,
About 12 minutes.
That's
Gary,
right.
is it
You don't
21?
shed
21
onto
is
the
the
parking
last
lot.
not parking?
Yeah.
So.
It's where the
you're talking
undercover
600
parking is.
It's where the undercover parking is.
Yep.
Yeah.
So 821 is the last unit and that. is
In that
where-
building.
And that's where the overhang goes to.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't have any leaks in Pinecone this year, did we?
Not in the units, on the porches.
Yeah, cause, well, I was gonna
They
say
got
it was,
close to units, but they-
we,
John,
there's
19,
there's
21,
plenty of time
they
to
don't
talk
shed
about
onto the parking lot
solutions.
either.
If we're gonna take care of Pinecone, High Point first.
I
Yeah.
don't think so.
No, and then-
Pinecone could actually be done last,
Oh,
I think
Can
it's
that be
807 to
2
818.
years down the road.
818 maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll get to
Or-
there-
18
there
does.
is
So
no,
it's
there are
11
no
units.
rules if we decide on all in one option. It may be
Yeah.
that we
I
choose
think 818 is.
Well-
the best
what's
one.
worn out rather than the cluster. And the
The next three are
north-facing
on-
shingles are the worst.
They're
Yes.
set back.
Mark,
Yeah.
just
It's
minor.
807 to 818.
818, it's.
Yeah.
818 is the last unit in that group of units where the snow and ice drops right onto the asphalt.
Right on
Well,
asphalt.
I think we all recognize that for the most part, this is a beautiful situation, but we do have a problem that we just can't ignore. Gary? So these are some examples of standing seam bronze. 2 of them are at Fort Lewis. The Skyhawk Station shows the snow dams pretty clearly how they're installed. The chapel is the lower right photo. One roofer pointed out to me on the chapel, well, that obviously didn't use the clips to install the standing seam, and I can show the clips later. The proposal is the standing seam is put on with clips and all of the panels float. So they're not actually nailed on it because the roof expands and metal does not. Where
They can slide on each other.
they slide against each other. It's very, very nifty installation. But as you can see here, and would be the case here at Tamaron, the panels are fabricated on site and they're single panels from the tip of your eave to the end of your eave. So it's single panels all the way from the start of the roof to the end of the roof, all the way across. They're only sheets, which I just think that's great. That lower left photo is one that has the bronze standing seam against the copper colored corrugated that we've got in a lot of different places, so you can see how they look together. Okay, the last choice is standing seam with nailable foam insulation. The pros are it's quiet. One thing about standing seam is it's metal and there'll be an oil canning with hail or heavy rain. It's got the insulative properties. The cons is it with standing seam is the most expensive possible option with materials and labor. From an engineering standpoint, you know, it increases the roof thickness. Now, this product here is 6 inches thick. And it only gives you 20 or 22, which I was surprised to see that. So we'll get to the engineering problem in a second. Eric brought this up the last time we talked about it. To do it right, you'd have to insulate above the decks, which is just, you know, you're insulating Mother Earth. The engineering problem is by increasing the elevation 6 inches. We have 160 stucco walls that would have to be cut and reflashed. About 160. Greg is got pretty close.
Yeah.
And I know that when speaking with Greg, I watched him wince. That's a big deal in terms of construction and you know what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
What benefit does it buy you?
The insulation.
I mean, I know it gives you some insulation.
I'm not sure, R22 is not that much.
And then the other thing is, what does it do for our holding snow? Yeah, I know this is gonna shed the
What
snow.
you have to do with shed.
You're,
anything
you're
that's gonna hold snow.
you're changing it from a warm roof to a cold roof.
I think that
It's not gonna affect the shedding with snow on these. beams.
It'll, yeah, because it'll be on the standing seam.
Maybe by a couple of hours, these standing seams will shed the snow. I don't care how good your insulation is, it's gonna slide.
It's gonna slide.
And you know, from speaking for me personally, I started out kind of thinking that insulation was the way to go. And then as I evaluated, I've done this. Now, that's just me. The construction problem and the potential issues that you're gonna have with cutting 160 stucco walls and reflashing them.
Well, you're gonna have to pull those trim boards off of there. And put them up higher.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to change.
And
the
then
whole
guess
profile.
what? And then guess what? They're not gonna fit. Because you've changed by raising that, you've changed the length,
Change the whole profile.
the whole profile, and now you're gonna have to cut all new boards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you're painting and
And again, back to what you said, Joe. What are you getting? R22. Now. And then you can, not only is it R22, but it's how many individuals are here in the winter using heat, probably 50-50, maybe more than that.
The comparative cost of utilities here is much less than it is in the other places most of us live.
So it's probably safe to say this is not an option.
I think it can. the
We can move on.
construction side-
Economically, it's not
Yes.
can
enough.
I ask a question, Greg?
Yeah.
So. As an owner who is not extremely well versed in roofs and construction, although I've learned a ton this year. If I'm an owner and I'm sitting in my condo. And we do this option, no insulation. And I sit there in the summer and I sit there in the winter. How will I experience the consequences of that choice? how will I experience no insulation? Because it seems to me that there's a lot of expensive and unnecessary extra construction work with insulation, but just from the owner experience, I understand rain might be louder. That's okay. I like the sound of rain, but how else will I experience that?
You're not gonna experience much of a difference,
It-
because you're still gonna
okay,
get the
it-
solar
you're-
gain from your clear story windows and all that stuff.
Your
Mhm.
It's gonna
utility,
get trapped in your units.
your utility bills aren't gonna change.
Yeah.
much.
Not much.
It's,
I
Right.
mean, if you put
Right
the
now.
insulation in there,
You'll save a little in the summertime. This is reflective. This will
Perfect.
reflect
but
something like that.
it virtually,
We did in our
right now,
building.
we have virtually no insulation, so it's really not much more.
Right.
Plus the walls.
Then
don't
what
have
we-
any- It's gonna go to the.
Well,
easiest
the
way
walls,
to get
the
it.
walls do have insulation.
I put a bullet there at
They
the
do.
end,
Not
option
much,
it
yeah.
and install.
Not much.
I'm sorry?
I put a bullet at the end called opt-in, install, interior install, and I've talked to several people about this, and if a person felt very strongly about insulating their ceiling, there is an option where a person could put in insulation and put in a facade ceiling that is the same planking that's
It's been-
there in place right
It's
now.
been done.
Yeah.
It's been done.
And so if and quite frankly, for the cost of doing all of this on an individual basis, it may be cheaper to put in, install.
To insulate from interior up
Yeah.
instead of
You
from
don't have
exterior.
all of the invasive
That's
construction.
an option for
Mhm.
individual units. I mean,
But do keep in mind that, and Joe and I have talked about this with Dave Dunn in years past. That for whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, the idea was that we did not have on the pitched roofs, we did not have insulation. Because we wanted the heat from the inside of the unit to help melt the snow, to shed the snow.
Right.
Now, if you insulate between the heat coming from and you insulate that, then there's a chance you could accumulate and then you start worrying about load.
Mhm.
And you certainly wouldn't want your roof to fail because you have some insulation. And Greg, you probably know more about that than we do, but
well, and that's the beauty of the standing seam. It's gonna shed. I don't care how much insulation you have, it's gonna slide.
Whether it's cold roof or warm roof, it's still gonna
It's
slide
gonna
off.
slide.
That's
I'm just saying the
great.
original design,
Oh,
and I
absolutely.
remember
I totally. agree
50
with
years
that,
ago, and
because-
maybe that's not
well,
smart thinking
yeah,
anymore,
no.
but that's what the thinking was.
John, you're exactly right on that. I mean, the way these things were originally designed, they're not designed for heavy snow load particularly, just because. The structure, you've got beams and long spans between beams and things like that, so.
Yeah, as part of diligence, if you're ever even consider it, you'd have to have a structural engineer. do an
Yeah.
analysis.
Yeah, so it does seem, and I know we're not here to make decisions, but it does seem that this fourth option has enough negative about it that it just doesn't seem like
Yeah.
a good idea right now.
No, I've heard a lot of owners passionate about insulation, and I think that if someone is passionate about insulation, there is an opt-in. Do it with the interior.
Yeah, let me ask Greg. This is gonna shed, the standing seam is gonna shed snow.
Right.
At what point? 3 inches, 6 inches, 12 inches? When does it start shedding? Right away or?
Well, I mean, it just depends on how cold it is outside. But it'll shed, pretty much every time you get 3 or 4, 5, 6 inches on there, it's gonna start to shed.
It's as the
Especially
day,
with 5 foot
as the day warms up. And it starts to melt from the sun, it's gonna shed a lot faster than it does now.
And right now, with no insulation in there, it's gonna shed like right now.
And the only issue is, that I can think of, and you tell me if there's any concern, is that last 8 feet above the decks where it's cold underneath, where we get the ice dams now.
Yeah.
Are the ice dams going to be, we're probably gonna have some ice dams, but are they gonna be less?
It's gonna be way less.
Way less.
Because it's gonna all shed,
Okay,
even though those overhangs where there's, no heat out there. And we watched that unit over there past years, this last winter.
846.
836, it has standing seam on it,
Yep.
and it sheds, it's beautiful, it's a beautiful thing.
So I know, but like, yeah, so you went around and you looked at that and you observed how it performed with the heavy snow we had.
Yeah, all winter. There may be still snow left there from the pile.
And did you ever observe a lot of any kind of a
No,
large
no,
ice dam?
No, there's
It
no-
just kept coming off.
it kept coming off.
So
I like the
actually,
sound of that.
if you have a 35-degree day, that 35-degree day is gonna come up and hit it from the bottom.
Yep.
Well, the weight of all that snow that's up above, even if it tries to freeze down below.
It's gonna push it off.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's nowhere for the ice to get through as you have now into those cold spaces, porches. Bicycles will come through the roof. The standing seat, there's nowhere for it to go.
Gravity. Yeah, it's gonna shed.
It's gonna shed off.
Like magic.
And if you remember back from Allison's report, this was what she suggested. It was a standing seam without insulation.
insulation.
Okay.
And you know.
Sounds to me
again,
like that's the way we're leaning.
and-
I know we're not making any decisions.
Yeah,
no decisions, but I'm just saying
That
one
was the
thing, so-
architect's recommendation.
Yeah.
So imagine driving down up 550 from Durango, our roofs are our architectural element. And you have bronze uniform standing seam across the entire complex.
Except for the multicolor we have now.
You talking about the hammered copper?
No, the multicolor roofs we have now.
Oh, yeah, the sun faded.
Yeah.
Composition sheds.
Yeah, you know the story behind that. They brought shingles in and I mean, if you look at the ones right along there on Gamble Oak. They're different, the shingles are different colors.
Oh, yeah.
And they were originally when they first went up.
Yeah, Richard Gibson told me that story.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would really dress up the property. Make it look
upscale.
much more upscale.
It's upscale.
Do we have any numbers that
We can't talk about.
oh, we can't talk about? that?
Numbers are off the table right now.
Oh, they are? Oh,
Yeah.
That's next,
Okay,
in our next slides.
okay.
So this is the last slide. This just gives the scheduling and contracting options, and there's really two. One is to do one contracting schedule, one option at a time, one unit at a time. And we start at High Point, and High Point actually shows the bar craft going into the end of this year. And that's because we have some terminal roofs in High Point that have to be dealt with this year. It could be dealt with just getting the water shield on, and it would survive the winter with just water shield. But there are times in talking with roofers that in December, you'll be able to get steel up and get it in place. But there are some terminal roofs in High Point that have to be dealt with, about 5. And then you talked about pine cone last, it could be done last, it doesn't matter, this is just a schematic. And then there's the combined project where we contracted for the whole job. And again, I put a light blue box in 2026 because roofers have said they probably could get it done in 2 years. But you know, you give them 3 so they don't default on the contract. The pros and cons, with individual clusters, you have more QC over contractors, and that, you know, you're one contract at a time, and if the contractor does a lot of the job, you don't have to hire them for the next. Each cluster owner pays individually. I'm not sure whether that is a pro or a con. It may be a sort of, but I'll put it under pros. The cons are it lacks economic scale. You've got risks, you know, moving ahead with each project each year. You've got labor material inflation risk. Good bet that it won't, the price in 2026 will be more than the price in 2023. Supply availability risk. I'm particularly sensitive to this in my other life because we've got a project in South Texas that's being held up because you can't get transformers for telephone poles. Supply risks anymore are something we need to consider. Management changes, you know, how that could interfere with one project after another. And while the cluster owners pay individually, each project would have to be paid for fully in advance.
Mark, do we also have and maybe it's there, I'm just not seeing it. If we schedule these all individually, being like in different years, possibly different roofers, is there a concern that maybe our roofs won't match? The product we get will vary?
It's a possibility, and talking to the way this stuff is manufactured, so. And again, this sort of goes into the supply availability risk tier. and I'm just saying this company, US Steel manufactures the steel. Sherwin-Williams manufactures the coatings. There's gotta be coordination between the colors and such. And you put the two of them together and put in an order. Is there that possibility? Probably, it could be, but then again, Fort Lewis, if you go to Fort Lewis, they've got construction that was done on various buildings in various years, and one thing that the campus has, very uniform looking.
It is uniform. I went and looked.
They have all standing seam, every building. I went to school there and I didn't pay attention to it, but now that we become roof experts in the past month. It's very impressive design, and a lesson learned, I think, is they're not doing that design because it's short-lived. They're doing that design because they're an institution and they build things that last for decades.
So the benefits from doing it in the combined mode is we save some money and we are guaranteed that the materials are all uniform.
Yeah.
That is, it's a given.
That's the big one, really.
So, in a production run is a term, because of the scale of the three projects. You go to US Steel and you say, we want a production. And that saves it's a considerable amount upfront. But it would require buying all materials upfront. And I could add color to that if we want to get into that today. But with a 2023 price guarantee, there's no inflation.
No
Okay, that's the
inflation.
price guarantee for materials. What about labor?
Same.
He's willing to, Ross is willing to guarantee the labor cost over 3 years,
He's betting he can get it done in 2.
or over 2 years.
And we've seen what inflation's done the last year. That could be a very material matter.
It's like your proverbial highway project where you've got your fast build and you've got your build that can take time. With a high margin project, the way we're set up, where the high margin project comes along for a roofer, he can say, I'm pausing because I've got a 3-year window. I'm pausing here and doing my high run project. And then when he comes back and the guys are, rather than sitting around the shop, they can come here and plug and play a low margin project. And that's how the highway contractors work as well. So, no inflation risk. The material supply is assured, color is assured. I didn't think of that, but it's true. The way that this can move forward is there can be installment payments over about, let's say, an 18-month period for both materials. And of course, the roofing is paid and as the contractor goes along, similar to how is it, 1 month draws or 2-week draws or something?
2-week draws.
2-week draws.
I want to add too, I believe that I believe I'm correct, the storage of all of our materials that are pre-purchased would be free. There's
It
not,
is free, but more. So US Steel would require a down payment on the production run. After the down payment, they would warehouse the material at Pittsburgh, wherever it is. And we would pay and draw on 400 square units over 18 months. So if Ross is out here and he says, I need 3 squares, 400 squares is 400 foot square is about 4,000 square feet. I need 2 squares, order 2 squares. I need 2 squares in 3 weeks. You don't order the squares, have them over, and then the materials after the down payment would have to be, would be paid for as you use them. So there's a installment option available on the materials as well as the labor. But you have to commit to the materials up front.
You don't have to write a check for,
You don't have to write a check for all of them up front. You can,
And they'll store it and they'll store it at the manufacturing facility,
no cost.
no cost.
And in terms of, without mentioning dollars, how would these installments look? A third right now, a third in 6 months, and a third in terms of cash flow runway.
And so everybody knows, when we were starting this process for the clusters, Paige and Lisa were on the phone and they called approximately 20 different roofing companies from Grand Junction to Albuquerque, asking them, can we send you a bid package? Would you be interested? And a lot of them said, no, we're not interested. So what we did find 6 that said, yes, you can go ahead and send us the bids. And so we sent out bid packages. We only received 2 back. So that's kind of where we're at and what we're choosing from.
And I just want to mention, I mentioned the materials contract. There's one other important factor that owners would need to, if you went with the all of the above, the combined project done, all owners would share in all of the billing all at once.
oh, so no matter what the order of completion was,
You
Yeah.
you're gonna be billed. It's a project essentially, is what you're saying. It's just
comfort to
takes time.
owners- The comfort to owners, again, is less money up front. It's a considerable chunk of money.
That's just materials, so
No, that, well,
you wouldn't be paying like.
again, my vision is a third, a third, a third. You just can't have monthly assessments to owners, it just wouldn't work. A third, a third, a third, an assessment is bang, so many dollars. A dollar, a dollar, a
And
dollar.
yeah, and what Mark is saying right here is
You
the
divide up,
assessments, a third,
so
third.
the individual assessments for each unit type. You take that total, you cut it in 3 pieces,
And
and that's how you
Right.
pay it.
6
Yeah.
month dinner.
So it's
6
not,
month intervals.
it's not that every owner's gonna pay the same. Every owner's gonna
No.
pay according to their
The size.
size of their unit, that
Right.
their particular
Right,
charge will be divided into 3, so that allows
Paid
them
over
to,
18 months.
you can pay it up front. You can pay over 18
It's
months,
really treating us as a community,
12 months, 18 months.
simple as that.
And as long as the period of, from the beginning of whatever cluster, it sounds like I pointed,
Yeah.
as long as there's not too much time between the first one getting fixed and the last one getting fixed, I don't think people are gonna be,
I think it's gonna be 2 years on that,
Yeah.
I've been told it'll be 2 years.
Yeah.
There's a strong incentive for the roofer to get it done in 2 years, because
Yeah.
it's better to get paid everything in 2 years than it is 3 years.
right. This may sound petty, but in other words, if we pay the same, but one cluster gets the benefit of their dollars quicker than it.
But
yeah,
in 2 years,
yeah.
everybody's gonna have the same roof
Yeah.
and, again, saving money up front.
Yeah. Yeah.
No inflation risk.
High
And
Point had
that's huge.
leaks, none, the other 2 did not.
Makes some sense then in terms of how you start.
Yeah, and that's the only reason why.
Yeah.
Is
And it
'cause-
goes in line with the age of the roofs.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, that's true too.
Somebody told me that Durango weather guy is predicting a colder than normal and a snowier than normal
I
winter.
love that too. He says colder than normal, and snowier than normal unless it's not.
Well, there's always that qualification.
Way to hedge your bets.
Yeah, there's,
Until May, I'll tell you exactly how the winter's gonna be.
there have been people on both sides this year. Normally, they usually agree pretty much, but there's been people on both sides this,
Predicting.
for this
predicting
coming
different-
winter.
yeah.
Well, we'll get ready
I know
for
that
the
people
worst.
try to go, at the end of this month, they're saying we're gonna start seeing the water get crispy.
Let's hope that it's not snowier than last year or this past year.
Page.
Oh, it's
Oh,
Paige.
okay.
Sure, sorry.
Paige, I thought you liked all the snow we had last.
Oh, no, we did not.
Jerry and I did, it was great.
Skiers did, skiers did.
Yeah, I love it.
But I want to thank Mark for putting
Yeah,
that
thank you,
together.
Mark.
Good job,
Very
Mark.
informative.
Very good. Very well done.
Thank you, Mark.
So there it is.
So when is decision time?
You know, I don't think we have much time.
We gotta get High Point done,
We, you
right?
know, we've got it.
I mean, the part of High Point anyway.
John will give the order that we have to do things, we have to accept the bid. And we could do that at a executive session, Thursday.
We ought to talk dollars in an executive session on
Yeah,
Thursday.
We have to.
We will.
And that's. Yes. But we could do that Thursday and then, you know,
I talked to Mark about.
I suppose, I hope having them today, option, choosing the option is gonna be relatively easy, but you know, John, if you could help me. We have to accept a bid. And then we have to choose the option, correct?
Yes, right. If we have multi-option bid, then we accept the bid and that's the easy part of it. But then you choose the option, but I mean, I think that's simultaneous. In other words, you accept the bid. And I think, you know, pending contractual negotiation is something we can talk about in executive session. But we will have to come out of that session and consider
To
the
take a formal action.
right, and, you know, I mean, people have the opportunity to,
And
Comment.
and the way these bids were solicited, it was a matrix, you know, we asked for a matrix of every which way but loose.
right,
Once we narrow that down. You know, if we accepted a bid and accepted an option, it may be that the bidder, the roofer that was awarded the bid. We will want to have them at the table and ask some questions about the option before we agreed on that.
And then the ultimate contract would be tailored to be that option and, you know, the first, one of the four, and then the two timing options. And it'd all be condensed down into one, here's what you're gonna do. Take all those other things out of it.
Well, I shouldn't say, but I think there's a couple of roads that we could probably eliminate, but you don't have to tear in our throats, but, you know, they're just so bad, so. They're almost no brainers, but we had to look at it.
Well done. Well done.
Scott, do you have any questions?
Scott there.
Muted.
No, I think I'm good, guys. I mean, I've obviously have my opinions and I think I'm probably in line with most of you on cosmetically what would be the best, you know. Timing, it won't surprise a soul. I'm in favor of getting it done as fast as we can get it done, so. I do like the, yeah, we got to deal with, I mean, we have to deal with High Point. That's the key. I think we've got a longer leash with Gamble at least. But, you know, again, I think, the way we've laid it out makes sense and, you know, I'm in favor of us just moving forward. And I just want to remind everyone that we're still working on trying to get our insurance renewed. So that's a big part of the discussion.
Insurance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think, again, a good question to potential insurers is, out of the possible, how would you feel about all steel roofs on our complex? I think we know the answer.
I think they would feel good about that.
I know they feel good that there's.
they're already happy. The guys I'm
Yeah.
talking to are already happy about this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be better with, I mean, the only thing they're gonna question when you get to metal is they tend to limit hail damage. But beyond that, I mean, that's a bulletproof roof.
And one bidder did. His bid he upgraded just because he says we should have it. It's all 24-gauge steel.
We don't get big hail down here.
No,
We get
no,
the.
we get that big hail.
Mhm.
I've been here.
I like Dallas.
Yeah, and I like Texas.
I like Dallas, right? Not like Denver front, not like up in Denver.
Yeah. I lost a roof in Dallas and a car in Denver.
Or Oklahoma City.
Baseball size.
My roof never wears out. It just gets replaced from hailstones.
Just wait 20 years and call insurance and get a new roof.
There you go, pickup truck, yeah, there you go. We're riding a country with you.
I lost my roof in Dallas. and-
Gary's,
Well, we changed that.
Gary's writing a country western song?
Yeah.
What?
We lost our roof in Dallas and.
Gary, you've been keeping
We
company
do-
with Texas
since
for
we-
too long.
Since we
What
really don't
percentage
have much
of the,
here,
Overall cost.
we'll
is
take
labor
it.
versus
Royce.
materials.
I don't have that number.
Hey, can I ask a quick question? I heard you guys say earlier that they may be done 2 weeks earlier. Somebody communicating with Heather and the rental program around timing? He'd shut down the lodge, obviously.
We haven't yet.
Be into the shoulder season by then, Scott, but I'm sure Heather would appreciate.
Yeah.
We get enough fall leaf geeks that, people do come through, so we should let her know as soon as we think we know good timing.
I'll
Yeah.
send her an email right now and let her know.
Okay, thanks, Paige.
Well, I mean, you have to say at this point, it's a tentative notification because we
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
them. But I
Sure.
think alert her. Yeah, I think that's fine.
We anticipate.
Yeah, I'll let her know. We anticipate it.
But correct me if I'm wrong, if the scheduled completion was October 1st and he's talking about September 23rd, that's 1 week.
That's a week, yeah.
That's a week, not
Wait.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Which better than
Wait, what's
Yeah,
a week
but-
among friends?
But did
I'll disrupt
did you really truly think they would make it on time
You know, the ditch. to
from the
raise.
start?
Oh, that's 2 or 3 days.
No,
Well, no projects get done on time.
No,
Anybody who ever's worked on my house, I just
Just-
assume it's gonna not be on time.
just the ones with the what's the term I'm looking for?
Incentive,
Incentives, yeah.
you know, the Albuquerque.
Early completion
um,
incentives.
40 on I-25 junction. That got done in time. You got all the property all around it.
Okay.
Or the ones with penalties for being late.
Yeah.
Incentives for.
Yeah. So
All right, we good.
any other questions? Not, then we're done.
Please.